Good evening and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have on Jizzy Pearl. We're going to talk about his new book. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I want to see your Ian Anderson uh, interview. I
It's a
mean,
good
yeah,
one.
he doesn't really do those anymore, does he?
No.
He was part of my youth because he would make these long form records,
Yeah,
basically like Passion Play or Thick as a Brick. I mean, it's three songs.
yeah.
And so it was good to get stoned to, you know what I mean? Because it was good background music. You could
Mhm.
just I mean, I think he was one of my first concerts when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Going to see him at the Forum in LA, and I went with Val Kilmer. We
Really?
went to we went to the concert with two older ladies. I think they were 17, and because they had cars, so they drove us, and we went to this Jethro Tull concert. And once he started, everyone started lighting up the joints and stuff like that, and so that
Yeah.
fog of the dope smoke, and yeah, it was good times.
So let's talk about your book. So I got it on the side screen here so I can look at the titles on the side here. Your book is a mixture of different stories, horror, suspense, some real information, and then some of them kind of cross the line between real and then it goes off into a story.
Real and surreal.
Yeah, even better. Where did you get that idea from? Like, are there having the books being so mixed like that? I mean, your books have been like that, but
You know, I, I get an idea for a story. Sometimes it's fictional, and sometimes it's just based on what happened in my life. Whenever when I was a kid, or because I grew up in the valley, and drugs were available, and there was the freedom of being able to take drugs and to expand your consciousness. And sometimes, it's a funny story. I put some of those in the book. Back in the day, we were all living in the Love Hate building, and nobody had any money. But my drummer Joey, his parents had a connection to the Los Angeles Forum, so we were able to go to concerts all the time, and we were also able to go eat at the Forum Club restaurant, which was a 5-star restaurant, and it was a celebrity packed thing. Like if you went to a Lakers game,
yeah.
there'd be the mayor and a bunch of celebrities there, and then there'd be the four stoned guys. You know what I mean? And then hilarity ensued from there.
Like I give a chapter called The Dutch Oven. Starts off kind of funny, clearly by the name of it, but it has a little twist to it, you know. Um, those are some of my favorite stories. That was a good one. I think you do real good on you have a lot of revenge type of comebacks on through any of your books actually. A few of your books have had some short stories like that.
Well, I was brought up watching the Twilight Zone,
Hmm.
and a lot of those stories always had that twist ending. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
so maybe on that one and some of the other ones, I like to kind of throw a left hook at the end to kind of freak people out.
It's pretty funny though. It was really good. Then you have some made up stories. So you have some I think I'll say my favorite story was it's Satan's Home Improvement Center. That is the best. I'd love to actually see that like expand into like another story down the road. That's really a good idea for a story you got there or a short story.
It's weird. It's weird.
It
I mean, there's some stuff in there. Some of the original fiction is
mhm.
weird, uh, but it's a mixture. That's the thing is I talk about stuff that happened to me, but on the Sunset Strip and
Right,
Hollywood and stuff, and so it has that link to the Tommy Land and people that want to read the
right.
dirt. But then there's also the original fiction. It's kind of half and half, I guess.
How are you writing these? Like, are you getting a concept, just writing them down as you like when you're touring and stuff? I mean, how does this you collect them over time, or you just actually sit down and kind of pick it? You know what
It's
I mean?
kind of just based on when I'm in writing mode. For example, when I'm in music writing mode, I pretty much immerse myself into that and song, 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 song. You know what I mean? Record, record,
Hmm.
record. Get the collection, And then as far as book writing or something like that, it's the same concept. You get an idea, you write it longhand, sort of flesh it out. And I mean, people have said, why don't you write longer stuff? Why don't you write a novel and stuff like that? Well, because it's hard. Because it's
Right.
hard. That's the difference between somebody writing a 15-minute short film and a
Mhm.
3-hour movie. I mean, it's a skill set. I maybe I will achieve that one day, but it's hard.
I can see
It's
that. I
hard to be
mean,
original.
well, I mean, but you have a lot of really good stuff. I could even see a book of short stories of like I was saying earlier. I mean, that's just my opinion. I love your horror suspense ones. Those are my favorite. I could have keep reading them. I mean, there's parts of the books where I just like I didn't put it down for like a good hunk of time.
This book is less harsh than
Yeah.
the other ones. The other ones were definitely harsher, talking about that and talking about the groupie scene and stuff like that. A little bit, dare I say, misogynistic, but I don't know. I've just sort of mellowed out. I'm older now. I'm married, and I can look back on some of this stuff with fondness and with humor, as opposed to trying to stick the knife in.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this I would say because your last book, even the first couple chapters were pretty eye-opening. Kind of woke you up coming right into it. You know what I mean? Whereas this one kind of eased you into it. Just the stories.
Yeah, it's a different, I mean, it's been a while since I wrote a whole book. It's been 15 years. And so I've done a lot of living and a lot of you know, like everyone else. You know what I mean? You grow up and you become someone else, and hopefully you're more well adjusted.
One of the really great things about this is actually, and it's such a silly thing that you'd expect, is how well you actually write and the grammar and the punctuation.
Most people think I write in crayon.
No, well, not even just that. It's like if you read anything online, anybody that does their own books online, you know, and self-publishes, there's a whole bunch of mistakes in them. I still read professional books, and you still find mistakes in them.
This is my fourth one, and I am, I like to think that I'm pretty literate. And yeah, I mean, as far as the editing process, you just have to do it a bunch of times, over and over and over and over. And I had my wife go over it, and she found a bunch of little things, you know what I
Hmm.
mean, that I missed. And yeah, I mean, when I say that this book is real writing and stuff like that, it's not like I'm trying to disparage the other books by rockers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because it just depends. If you want to read a book about Rat and Stephen Piercy, you're going to get what you want to get out of that,
Right,
or the Stephen Adler book or something like that. Stephen didn't write it. You know what
right.
I mean? But what you're gonna get that Guns N' Roses experience out of that. And this is just a different animal. This is real writing, and I think a lot of people will be surprised and will dig it because of that.
This book is more advanced because the stories aren't so risque. I mean, like, where is this book going to settle with people?
I just feel like good writing is good writing. I mean, it's kind of like songwriting. I don't really care who writes the song. You know what I mean? Willie
Mhm.
Nelson, Elton John, John Lennon, Sid Vicious. A good song is a good song, you know what I mean? And it has whatever that X factor is. And so that's how I go when I look at my writing or other people's writing. I talk about this, how I'm a big reader and I have an extensive library of books. And sometimes my favorite writers start to lose their mojo
Right.
after becoming wealthy and becoming, I don't know, shit changes. They're not as hungry as they used to be, and the writing suffers, and you see it, and it's a sad thing. But then again, the guy has written 10 or 15 books, and who am I to judge, him or where he's been and stuff like that. Stephen King being the exception. I mean, there's hardly any
Right.
bad writing from him.
I can't believe he's still putting out still huge books too. Like,
He
just pouring out.
continues to surprise me. I mean, it's just amazing. He's one of the big ones.
He is. I guess what I'm saying is like with your books, like because your audience, you're selling them off. I mean, you have your talk about your fans and your super fans and your different levels of people. So
Mhm.
automatically, a big percentage of your super fans are going to get anything you do, and then there's going to be people that are interested in the rock story and they're kind of like dabbling.
How do I break out of that bubble?
But I'm just thinking about the book itself, and there's such a bigger audience out there that just
Mhm.
wouldn't look at a rock book because they think it was a rock book. You know what I mean? And there's so much more in it. So it's not even about your name because you could just do J Pearl and do a black book cover.
Yeah, I
So it's
mean,
not so much about that. It's just how do you break free from getting to that new book world nowadays?
I don't know. I mean, it's amazing that there are people that still read. I mean, some people just don't even watch the news. I mean, I just it's a weird world that we live in. You know what I mean? That where you put out records that nobody buys anymore, and you make books that nobody reads, and you make shows that nobody watches, and it's just because there's just so much of a plethora of stuff and 10,000 stimulations that how do you break out? How do and I do not know the answer to that.
Well, I think if people need to read or they need to take time and just like listen to an album, and you need to unplug from this world. And I think that's going to be the survival in the long run for a lot of people.
You
If
know,
you don't unplug and do something like read a book, use your imagination.
I get it. And that's one of the big reasons that I've read for so long. It was easy, to escape what was going on in the world and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You immerse yourself in a book, and you're in it. You're a character in it, and you're living it, and it's killer. But I don't know. I mean, try and tell people, to I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, but look, I write books and I do records, and I hope people dig them because I dig them, and you know, maybe I'll be discovered after my death.
Hopefully not. I mean, I just think it's a weird mix. I mean, luckily you have you got your site, and it's going to be J Pearl. Actually, the site is actually right on this video right now underneath us. The address. People need to go there. It's going to be your one-stop place for all your stuff, plus your YouTube channel. So if anybody isn't subscribed to his YouTube channel, the link will be there. Subscribe to his channel also. Follow him on Instagram. You know, he's got more stuff coming out.
Yeah, I mean, what a competitive world this is. I
Yeah.
mean, here I am in the new medium of YouTube and stuff like that, and I just see somebody has 627,000 hits. I just going, who the hell is this person?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't get it. You know what I mean? But that's the
Oh,
weirdness.
it's insane. I have a grandson, and I'll see he'll watch a video, want to put it on, and it's got like a million, 2 million hits, and it's like a kid running around collecting bugs in the backyard with
It's
these
the
crazy
weirdest
weird
thing.
voices, and I'm like, I don't understand it.
Yeah. So where do I fit in? Where do people fit in? You know what I mean? Again, it's just another forum for excuse me, it's just another forum for me. It's just a way for me to express myself and have fun. You know what I mean? I want to the thing about music is it's so structured, and there's a very narrow lane for
Hmm.
what people like in their rock music. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can't, like Jethro Tull was completely in his own lane, you know, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
why people loved him. But then he did that Aqualung record and he exploded. You know what
Right.
I mean? And all of a sudden he had to be the guy in Aqualung. You know what I mean? And he was sort of forced to join the mainstream. You know what I mean? And so music is like that. 80s music, people want their music very there's a restriction as what people want for their music, and people that's what they want.
Well, I think with just not just '80s, but most music, yeah, they find you at that certain point in their life. Usually, they're like a late teen. It's their moment, their flashback memories. That's my best time of my life, and that's you're associated with those best moments for you or any other artist. You know what I mean? And the '80s for a lot
Can
of
you
people is that.
no? Can you imagine as a teenager your best moment was blacking out in a red room? You know what I mean? I mean, think about it, this. That's People ask me about that all the time, and I just go, Blackout in the Red Room is a dark song. It's we used to put, before we used to go to gigs, we would put that movie Barfly on at our loft, and we would listen to that. So I'm just saying that's what got us going. That's really dark, sort of drunken, intellectual stuff. And I mean, it's not She's My Cherry Pie. You know what I mean?
No, but I remember actually when I got that album, I remember exactly where I was and listening to it. I can visualize it right in my head right now. I go right back to it. You know, I was in college, I was going to recording school, you know. So especially the time.
But the record lasts the test of time. I mean, it's been what, 32 years, and the record still sounds amazing, and the songs are great. And
Right.
it captures that moment in time, and yeah, that's the good thing about the love hate experience for me, is that even though I don't do it as much as I used to, and the music from that era still lasts. I mean, I don't cringe when I put on, like some people cringe when they put on their records. You know, I might cringe at what I wore back then, but I don't cringe at the music, because the music still stands up. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, yeah, it's sonically good. I think one of the strong parts about even the band, and it falls over to our conversation now. You're right. It's your writing. You know, you kind of had that Jack Kerouac. Your writing, even in Love Hate, the lyrics may have been dark, but they weren't so. You didn't point. They didn't jump out at you. You didn't listen to it. The song was just good. So most people don't always listen to lyrics first off, but your lyrics weren't so blatantly. They're different than was out there.
Well, we were different. I mean,
Totally.
we were different. We lived in this building in downtown, and we were very much a tribe. And even though we went out all the time and we flyered and we hung out with the community and blah blah blah, we were a very tight tribe, and so our music was tribal. You know what I mean? And when we gigged, it was tribal. You know, when we toured, when we opened for Dio, a lot of the Dio audience didn't get us, and they didn't like us and stuff like that. But when we opened for AC/DC,
Yeah, I can see that.
we held our own, because we were crazy too. You know what I mean? I mean, Angus is nuts, but we were nuts too. And so people, I don't know, if for some reason we crossed over with that audience.
I think your vocals were more relatable to Brian Johnson than to Dio too. Dio always had that.
Yeah.
That he always sang clean. He always had it. I love Dio. But I mean, whereas you were more relatable. You had that clean. It's like a clean rasp, which you still to this day you still have it. It's like, I can't believe you still, because a lot of people are losing their voices. Yours is just as strong, actually. On your new one, it's even. It's really.
There's guys out there. I pay homage to Phil Lewis. Sounds better than ever. Robin McCauley sounds great. There's guys out there. There's guys out there that still, you know, can do it, and you're not seeing the behind the scenes of them taking care of themselves, and you know what I mean. They're not staying up all night doing blow and banging hookers. You know what I mean. They're taking care of themselves, because, you know, the YouTube thing is a real thing, and one bad video can just, it's just, it'll just, I wouldn't want to have a string of bad YouTube videos following me around, like in Ghost at the end with all those little black things, you know.
Could you imagine if there was somebody had a VHS camera and you guys were all playing early on?
Hey, everybody was drunk back then. Everybody was out of control back then in the 80s. Obviously, no cell phones, no YouTube,
Thank God,
no internet. But yeah, I mean, and I talk about it in some of my Hollywood stories about how people just had to be carried up on stage, and then they'd be leaning against the audience. The audience would be pushing against the guy to keep the guy from falling over. I mean, it was just, at the time, oh, he's such an artist. Oh, he's like Jim Morrison. Well, he's just kind of a drunken idiot, really. There was a time when you wanted to, it was almost like those old Carlos Castaneda things where you took the drug, and now you're going to experience the trip being the gig. You know what I mean? So you got to a certain point of euphoria or drunkenness, and to do your gig. And so it kind of Jim Morrison-esque, I guess, but we were functional. I mean, we weren't we weren't falling all over the place and we weren't embarrassing ourselves. We were
Right.
just controlled fusion, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And crazy. And it takes it when you're a shy, introverted person, it takes that, you know, love potion number 9 to get you to become the guy on stage that you need to be. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing worse than watching a band where they're just standing there and looking down. I mean, that's not rock to me.
Right.
You know, Motley Crue and AC/DC and you know what I mean? That's rock to me because it's the visual too.
And actually, it's funny you say. I just thought about it. Last time we talked, and I actually asked one of the most cliche questions I never ever asked, but I had to ask you, and it came up because I don't know where our conversation's going, and I had asked you if you still get nervous and you sang or something, because you come across as a person I wouldn't imagine being nervous or having, because everyone has different ways of they like say writing songs and getting nervous or not getting nervous. Some people still get nervous. Some people it doesn't matter anymore. They're so used to it. It's kind of hard to put a read on you, actually. That's I'm surprised that I even asked you that. It's like what?
Well, not necessarily nervous. Nervous is scared. More butterflies. More. I'm about to go on
Mm-hmm.
stage. I've got to turn the burners up on the stove. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing is kind of like when wrestlers come out of the thing,
Yeah.
you
All
know,
hyped
to
up.
the ring and stuff like that. They come out to music, or when Mike Tyson would come out to a boxing
Mm-hmm.
match, he's getting himself in his headspace necessary to you know to kill people. And that's kind of what it is for me. It's getting myself into that headspace for going out there and doing it.
It's just always interesting because I never really thought about it, and you always seem one of the few people I think that I thought would be like, no, it doesn't bother me either way, just from your nature and just
Well,
from.
there's guys that just turn it on really fast. I mean, you know, it's a process and stuff like that. Like I said before, you know, back in the day, I was a shy intellectual guy, and here I am, you know, trying to channel my inner David Lee Roth.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you do that? How do you do that when you haven't had the luxury of so many gigs and tours and stuff like that to where it becomes natural? You know what I mean? You got to become that guy. So how do you do it? Well, you just add alcohol. You know what I mean? And start spitting fire, and it worked. I mean, it definitely it brought out my Mr. Hyde and my you know what I mean.
Yeah, it did, and luckily you have a voice, and there actually is a relevancy. I know we're talking about this, and we're here promoting the book, and actually, this you have stories actually in the book that tie into some of these challenges and how you overcame it. That tie into exactly what we're talking about. This and actually in your last book too, you that people can still get. I think just online, right?
Yeah,
Okay, which I have. I bought online, so it's
JizzyPearl.net.
that's
Yeah,
right.
I'm sure you'll have the links.
It'll have the links and the word. It says it right underneath us. It says it too. Um, so that's, I guess what I think is like when people don't let artists grow, like
Mhm.
perfect example would be like Jim Morrison. Do you think Jim Morrison would be Jim Morrison nowadays? No, everyone would be like he's awful, he's horrible, he's fat, he's this. Jim Morrison didn't want to be Jim Morrison, you know. Anybody who died,
He'd look like Sling Blade right now, probably.
yeah, or like you think Janice would have lasted, her voice would have lasted, or Jimmy, you know what I mean?
No,
Where would they have all gone in this time at that pace?
they would have, well, been dead or burnt out, for sure. But I mean, the idea that someone like Janis Joplin or Jimi Hendrix dying at 27, you know, it floors me because it took me a long time to become, you know, whatever I am now. You know what I mean? It took a lot of years, took a lot of touring, you know, and kind of like being in the army. You know what I mean? How you go through boot camp and you're a different person. You know what I mean? Or someone goes off to war and they come home and they're changed. You know what I mean? They're more mature, they're quieter, they're more introspective or stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. That's kind of how it is with me with music and how I approach music now and touring. You know, like being in Quiet Riot, it's, you know, it's a good job, it's a job. People go, oh, you think it's just a job. Well, it is a job. I'm not Kevin Dubrow. I'm
Right.
not the original singer. I'm always going to be, the guy that replaced Kevin Dubrow, and that's okay. But that's fine. You know what I mean? You approach it differently. You go there, you do your fly out dates, you do your gig, you get on the plane. It's a lot of travel, and it can be tiring, but it's also really fun. You know what I mean? So there's no late night nonsense. There's no stripper poles. There's no, you know what I mean?
I do. I like that. I like to see artists grow. I was maybe on the opposite. I don't need to see artists become. I don't need to see you be who you were when you're 20. I actually see a lot of artists that are holding on now to trying to be it. Is actually, I'd rather see them age and relax a little bit.
Yeah. I just feel like the most important thing these days for musicians is to be good on stage, not to shit on that responsibility and take it for granted because of YouTube, because of your own head as well. You know what I mean? If you want to phone it in and go through the motions, then the rock gods think you're a piece of shit, and you are a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Because it's a very wonderful thing to be able to do music for a living, and people should remember that. You know what I mean?
And the best part about your writing is it almost feels like when you read a really good book, you feel like you're walking with part of the experience. Not that you actually lived it, but you have a kind of a perspective of what that person went through. And that's a good writer.
You can identify with it. That's what a good song does. That's what, when you somehow that chorus is so memorable and so repeatable that it sticks with you, and somehow you carry it with you. I mean, it's a weird thing, and how can you put your finger on it? What's the difference between Hey Jude and Why Don't We Do It in the Road? You know what I mean? It's who knows?
Well, the good and the bad is obviously, Love Hate, and you didn't break as huge as say Cherry Pie, but then again, your lyrics are different, and you're not worrying about there's never an apology or a weird time you're like, I wish I didn't write that.
Well, it could have very well not happened. That's the whole thing. Is some people say, oh, if Love Hate would have gotten signed a couple of years before, yeah, I mean maybe, but then again, maybe not. Maybe it would never have. And a lot of guys, most guys, it didn't happen at all. You know what I mean? And they moved on to other things like heroin or crime or insider trading or something like that. But yeah, I mean, you can't kind of do the woulda, shoulda Monday morning quarterback thing. I mean, we were lucky to get a record deal, and we were really good, but it was also just the circumstances of how it happened and how on a razor's edge that we were at that time. I mean, we were just, thank God it happened.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. So as we wrap this up, the process, you have some hardcovers still, right? Like half of them are left now. How many have left?
Yeah. About half.
So we go to jizzypearl.net, order the book. You'll ship it out to them pretty quickly. And
yeah.
You want to add to that?
No, I just, I mean, you read the book. What's the difference between it and the other ones? I mean, it has, I don't know. To me, it has just as much flavor as the other books, but I don't need to go for the hard.
I would say, less shock value, maybe.
Yeah.
Not that you're trying to be shock value. You just have a lot of shocking stories. That's just who you are. That's the life you led. So if you're sharing your stories,
I was a shocking guy.
Right. So if you didn't want to, you have all these stories you want to tell. So if you did want to be shocking, you'd have to modulate and be like, okay, I have to censor myself and put these over here to not do it. But if you're just telling stories as they come to your mind that you've done or things, you just being you, just going to be shocking stories.
And there's a couple of gnarly ones in the book as well, but it isn't the whole tone of the book isn't Jesus Christ, I can't.
The last book did it to me. The first chapter going into it, kind of, I was like, okay, where are we going with this book?
it's just, you know, it's good writing, and it's got 100 more pages. So I mean, it's almost 300 pages. So it's a good piece of work, and I dig it, and people should check it out if they want to. And you know, if you're
Yeah,
into reading, if you're a reader, then you'll dig it. If you're into the salacious
right.
rock stuff, you're gonna get this in this book too. I mean,
Yeah,
it isn't Wuthering Heights. You're going to get your rock and roll experience, and there's, you know, having grown up on the Sunset Strip, you know, I'm like one of those the last people on the Titanic that's still alive. You know what I mean? Some 92-year-old woman. I remember when they, you know, that's how it is. I mean, there's not really too many of us left that were there that can sort of deliver that experience.
no,
And
of
some
course
of
you.
them have just grown up, and they're not this. They can't they can't channel and dig back into that experience and express it. You know what I mean? Whereas I can somehow, you know, look back on all that stuff with fondness, and tell a good story, tell a good tale.
All right. That's a perfect thing to end on. So everybody, jizzypearl.net, and get the book. All
Yeah.
right.
All right. Thank you, Sean.
No, no problem.
And I'll see you when I see you.